A little shift in plans tonight. Crissy Froyd could not make it at the last minute, but don't worry, we got you covered. We'll talk quarterbacks in the NFL draft, and Ryan and I are going to do a little mock draft for you. So go grab your Lake Monster Brew and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. I am your host, Matt Anderson, and tonight, as usual, co-host Ryan Ortega, producer Dave, and like I mentioned in the pre-show intro, we were slated to have Crissy Froyd of NBC Sports Edge and the Draft Network join us this evening. Unfortunately, due to some weather where she lives, she's without power. So without power means no show. So we will make sure to reschedule with her so you guys can hear all she has to say about this quarterback class as we head into the NFL draft. But tonight, you're stuck with the usual, myself and Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good. Just wrapped up a little family movie night. What did we watch? The Game Plan with Dwayne The Rock Johnson when he finds out he has a little girl. It was good. The kids liked it. So it was a nice little fun night. And now I get to do the podcast, drink some Lake Monster Brewery. I got Rare Species #1 tonight. So pretty excited about that. It's delicious as always. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good myself. Shifting in the plans, it's really testing my hosting abilities tonight. But I think we're going to be able to provide a good show still. So, and as far as my Lake Monster beer tonight, it is. Let's see if I can get it in the camera here. It's my raspberry sour. Not a huge sour guy, but this is maybe one of my favorites. So, um, if you're in the Twin Cities area, and when the weather starts getting nice again, get over to Lake Monster and try their raspberry sour. It's really refreshing. It's not too tart. Um, I'm definitely going to have to bring some of these out on the golf course when we go this summer, Ryan. So,
Yeah, that'd be great.
It sounds like
Dave?
a thirst quencher versus sit back by the fire and smoke your pipe.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Smoke your
I,
pipe.
I don't know if I could have more than one of them. Well, and this is a massive can, but um, it's definitely good. It's definitely good.
That's all a
Ryan,
matter of perspective.
unrelated to Lake Monster and the Vikings, you went to the Twins game last week. How was that? I didn't really get to ask you how that was, and just curious what your thoughts were.
Well, thanks to you, I got to go to the Twins game. So, quick little story for those listening. Matt texts me like morning before the day before home opener.
Yeah.
Hey, I got four tickets if you're willing to take them on. I can't go anymore. And I'm like, sure. I mean, assuming they're just like upper deckers, just like not great seats, but free Twins game, take the kids. Nice easy experience and we show up and I'm like, oh, what's this section? Section 4. It's not even like 104. It's just 4. And we walking down, and it's dugout seats. Where they got the fancy separate concessions and bathrooms, so you don't have to wait in line. All this stuff. So now my kids are going to expect that every time, which is an issue. But no, the game was great. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way we wanted. I think I'm the bad luck charm because I actually went to the first 2 games of the Seattle series, so home opener and next day, because we had a birthday. One of my friends had a birthday. His name's Jeff. Jeff's birthday. We went to the game, and we lost by 1 in both of those games. And then the very next game I don't go to, we win by like 3 or 4. So maybe I shouldn't be I definitely shouldn't be going to those games. But no, had a blast. Got to see the players right in front of us. My son got a game ball that was caught and thrown
Oh,
into the crowd. So, really good experience. Again, thank you again, Matt, for the generosity of hooking me up with those tickets. And if you guys haven't had a chance to go check out Target Field, phenomenal stadium out there. It's just great to be outside in decent weather. So.
absolutely. Well, let's shift gears here, and quickly touch on the quarterback. So, um, like I stated earlier, Chrissy was supposed to be on here to really help tell us all about the quarterbacks in this NFL draft upcoming in just what 16 days. It's not far away at all. Um,
2 weeks
so
from
let's talk about
tomorrow
them.
is round one.
I know the yeah, I know the Vikings likely will not take a top quarterback. I would be shocked personally if they took somebody that high. Uh, but it doesn't do any harm to let the guests know about these guys in the upcoming draft. We've heard about some of the names, and Ryan, I'm gonna toss it to you here, and you could take it any direction you want. But some of the names we've heard about consistently: Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Matt Corral, and Desmond Ritter. Those are some of the top names that at least I've heard of, and so I'm going to kind of rely on your expertise here to kind of fill the fans in on these top quarterbacks, and then when you're done, we'll head over and do a quick Vikings mock draft to wrap up the show.
Yeah, sounds great. And I'm not going to sit here and say my expertise is anywhere along the lines of Chrissy's expertise. She does this for a living and does a great job. So I'll do my best. So, taking a look at the quarterback class, obviously this is viewed as a relatively weak class compared to, what some of the classes that we've seen in the past. Actually, it's kind of funny. They're almost kind of comparing it back to I think 2018 class where it had the Baker Mayfield class. Now,
Mm,
obviously, Baker went number one that year, and then I think we had Josh Allen go in the top 10. Rosen, I think, went number 10, I believe. Sam Darnold, and then Lamar Jackson all the way at 32, right? So, there's some good quarterbacks that came out of the class, a couple busts, one middle of the road guy in Baker Mayfield. So, when you take a look at this class, I'm not sure because of the bust factor, I think, that happened in that class, and just the fact that some of these top picking teams don't necessarily have a major need in the at quarterback position. It's kind of tough to say that you're going to have a quarterback go number one. Now, the one quarterback that could go as high as number two, because the Lions do have that need for the long term. They have Jared Goff. Obviously, he beat us last year in a game, but outside of that, he's not much to write home about. Miles, get out of here with the Baker slander. We Malik Willis is probably the top quarterback in this class. What separates him, I think, from the rest of this class is just his pure athleticism and just pure talent with the football. He's a guy. He's not a overly large guy, like 6'1", but he's kind of built like a run, not like a running back. I don't like to say running back because I don't want to say he needs to move to a running back, right? But like he's kind of built like one, right? Where he can scramble, he can move, he can make people miss, and he has a rocket of an arm. So what's great about that is there's a lot of tools to work with. So he's going to be more of a projection than he is going to be a day one guy. You want to put him in a situation where he can sit, he can learn the nuances of the game, because if you watch his tape at Liberty over the last couple of years, there's a lot of wild plays, a lot of plays that remind you of a Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray, where he's out there, he's scrambling and he's moving and he just lets that ball go and it's just flying down the field, and the receiver makes a good play on the ball, right? He also has a lot of boneheaded plays. So being able to kind of slow that game down a little bit for him and allow him to kind of take the game as it comes to him a bit, I think it's going to serve him well. So having an opportunity to go to a team like the Lions, who have an established quarterback who doesn't have all that athleticism, all those tools, but does have the brains to be a quality quarterback in the NFL, he could probably learn quite well behind a guy like that. I think I saw somebody on here. Kenny Pickett is Christian Ponder without the hot wife. That's pretty funny.
I got a question about
That's
Malik.
kind of,
Is he
yeah. Go ahead.
like Russell was? When Russell was drafted, he came in and he sat because the Seattle Seahawks had just signed Brett Favre's
Matt
backup
Flynn.
for forever.
Matt Flynn.
Yeah, and then he turns into that, a little bit of time to learn this stuff.
Well,
He had the
actually,
running
what happened
capability,
with
had the
Russ?
arm.
Yeah. What actually happened with Russ is he didn't sit. He was ready to roll day one. He actually was the day one starter for that Seahawks team that year. Which is funny because Flynn just got this big
Yeah.
contract. They go and draft Russell Wilson in the third round, and then he just overtook the job in the offseason programs and training camp and was able to
Because
win
they
that.
paid him a
Now,
bunch of money.
yeah,
It was
I mean,
just
it was a
super
bad
fun. Like,
contract
they
for
paid
Matt
Matt Flynn
Flynn
a bunch of
in
money.
retrospect. Yeah, exactly. So Malik, I mean, sure, could he do that? Yeah, maybe. But Russell Wilson's body of work in college, I think, was a little bit more polished. He ran a system at Wisconsin his final year, and then at NC State the years prior to that, where it was a little bit more, I think, structured for him to make the plays in structure, and he had I think, more of the mental aspect of the game a little bit more tidied up than what I think Malik Willis has now, to come in and be a day one starter. Now, could Malik do that? I'm not in this guy's brain. I'm not in the meeting rooms. I'm not sitting there in film sessions seeing what he sees. He might have all of that buttoned up. Absolutely. But again, just watching the plays that he made at Liberty, and again, we got to take that with a grain of salt too. He doesn't have elite talent around him like he will in the NFL. He also wasn't going against elite talent like he will in the NFL. So it's a double-edged sword where, if he had better talent around him, maybe had he stayed at his original program, which I'm drawing a blank. I think it was Georgia, Alabama. He was one of those Southern schools.
Yeah.
Had he stayed there and maybe tried to win the job from whoever was there, maybe he would have had an opportunity to kind of showcase things and solidify himself for sure as a day one, number one pick. So Auburn, thanks, Mateo. I appreciate that. So yeah, yeah. So hopefully he comes in and does well. And again, Matt, I kind of want to kick this back to you a little bit. So obviously we're trying to link this, and we'll get into some of the other quarterbacks here in a minute, but we're trying to link this to the Vikings as well. And as you kind of alluded to, it's likely not going to happen that we're going to take a quarterback early, especially a guy like Malik Willis, who likely just won't make it to 12. Or if he does, I don't know if we're in a position to take him at that point in time. What are some of the things that you think your next quarterback, say Kirk Cousins finishes his contract here, he doesn't get his wish to retire a Viking, and we take a guy, what are some of the things that you want in your next quarterback? And then we can kind of segue that into the next prospect.
Yeah, I think for me something that really stands out in a quarterback is not necessarily on the field, and it's more so leadership. Um, I know that Viking fans in the past have kind of trashed Teddy Bridgewater when he left, and that's fair. I probably expected maybe a little bit more out of Teddy in his tenure here. Who knows what happens if he doesn't get hurt? But there's one thing about Teddy that everybody that's played with him will say, in that he's a leader of men, and people will gather behind him and follow his lead wherever. Like when he's at the helm, I don't think there's a player on roster that doesn't believe that he can make it happen. And so that's kind of what I look for from a personality standpoint in some of my quarterbacks. I just want to see that fight. Stafford gets a lot of shit sometimes as well for that, or at least he did back in Detroit. But that grit and that fight, uh, which also can lead to on the field improvisation as well. Those are things that I really look for in a quarterback. When we're moving on from Kirk, whenever that is, hell, he did just say he wants to retire a Viking, so we might be with him for 6 years for all we know here. But whenever that next quarterback steps in, uh, I want them to be, I mean, not dual threat isn't maybe the right word, but Patrick, when I think about a great quarterback, I always go back to Patrick Mahomes because he's not the speediest guy, but he's elusive in the pocket. He can move around, and he's very intelligent. Got a really strong arm. You just, I know it's a very like basic quarterback. Like this is what I want, but I want all those traits that I see from Patrick Mahomes. Like everybody on the Chiefs believes in that guy. Even Joe Burrow has it. You know, when you see these successful quarterbacks winning in the NFL, especially Super Bowls, there's something about them, and that's why, you know, teams, you know, like the Bengals supported Joe Burrow. The Chiefs, you know, even for a hot spell there, I'll give you this. Um, Baker Mayfield for a glimpse of time there. That team rallied behind him for a little bit. This last year, I think, got away from him. But
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
I think it does, yeah, and they kind of again. I was hoping it would help segue into maybe some of these other prospects, and it fits beautifully. So the next guy I wanted to talk about was Matt Corral. So you're
Yes, and
not
I've
hearing a ton
I've
of
heard he's
buzz.
very like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not hearing a ton of buzz about him right now because he wanted to gut out the a relatively meaningless bowl game. I mean, obviously, he's a competitor. He's a feisty competitor. He wants to be there for his team, and that goes into the leadership aspect. Now, was it probably the best decision for his career? I don't know, right? I mean, he played a relatively meaningless game. They weren't going to sit there and win the national championship due to that game, and he went out and I think second quarter he gets hurt. Now it wasn't a long-term injury; it's a high ankle sprain, I believe. So nothing that's going to be debilitating for the rest of his career, like a potential shoulder or an Achilles or even an ACL. It's relatively mild, but what it has done is it's prevented him from being able to really take part in this whole draft process. So when you look at some of these quarterbacks, you're hearing Malik Willis wowing at his pro day and wowing at the combine, and even Carson Strong with some just dimes at the combine, right? And you're hearing about all these other quarterbacks. You're not hearing about Matt Corral. So he's kind of the guy that's going a little under the radar. And what he does bring is that leadership. He's that guy. And again, I don't like comparing people to people necessarily because I don't necessarily think that's fair from a prospect perspective, because especially the recency bias. But you're looking at Matt Corral, you kind of see a little bit of feistiness in him, like you saw out of Baker Mayfield. Similar build, similar style. I think Corral's a little bit more athletic. I think has that a little bit more scramble ability than you would see out of Baker. But again, without seeing some of those numbers, I don't think he was going to test out of off the charts at the combine like a Desmond Ridder or a Malik Willis. So, but what he does bring is he brings that leadership, he brings that rally mentality, and he brings that gunslinger mentality. You had mentioned a guy who's elusive. He's elusive in the pocket, but he's not like this out of world athlete. He is willing to make the big throws. He's willing to make the Matt Stafford no look pass across the middle of the Cooper Kupp in the Super Bowl throw, right? And he's willing to take those shots where, again, for better or for worse, you take a look at a guy like Kirk Cousins, you love to see the fact that he has that low interception rate. And he's doing that intentionally because he's very calculated with how he throws that football. He's not taking chances, and for better or for worse, right? I mean, it keeps us from setting our defense up with poor field position a lot of times with more interceptions, but it also prevents us from maybe making a 1 to 2, 3, 4 plays in the process of a game that could be game-changing plays, especially when you have a guy like Justin Jefferson who can beat one-on-one or can make a play over a corner and really come down with that. So Matt Corral is a guy that's going to give your receivers that chance. Does he have the arm of a Carson Strong or Malik Willis? No, he doesn't. But does he have enough juice to get it there? Absolutely. And he faced some of the best competition, and he only got better throughout his college career. And even when he lost his best weapons, I mean, he lost Elijah Moore last year, and obviously we saw what Elijah Moore can do in the NFL. He did great last year, especially in the second half of the year when he was healthy. Losing a big weapon like that is very detrimental to a guy, and it wasn't for Corral. He was able to mitigate that and work around that.
Did you guys watch?
I got a question.
Hold on. Did you guys watch Monday on the Tyler Forno the Real Forno show with Thor Nystrom.
Yep.
I watched
Thor
parts of it.
Thor says Matt Corral and Malik Willis, out of the whole draft class of quarterbacks that he's evaluated, this whole class, Matt Corral and Malik have the highest upside, and both could be top 10 quarterbacks within a couple years. They have that ability. Unlike some of the other ones that are high up and will maybe go before Corral, obviously,
Yeah.
that don't and were made by their receivers versus the quarterback making the receivers.
Making
So
a player. Yeah.
I was actually
and I agree with that.
I was actually listening to Mel Kiper and Todd McShay's. They do a draft podcast, which I would recommend if people want to listen to more draft prospect coverage. But they were talking about Matt Corral in their latest episode, kind of calling out a lot of the same things you did as far as his leadership skills here. But it was interesting, Dave. You just mentioned Malik Willis and in Corral kind of being, having the higher of the ceilings of this quarterback class. Um, but I feel like this benefits Corral more than it benefits Willis. And the reason that I say that is a lot of people, when they talk about Matt Corral, it's just expected that he's probably going to sit behind somebody. I don't think he's going to be thrust into a starting role, whereas Malik Willis will. So it'll be really interesting to watch these two as they get drafted, especially figuring out where they get drafted, because Matt Corral is someone that, just based on the brief things I've read about him, he would actually be a really good prospect for the Vikings to try and draft to sit behind Kirk. Coincidentally, I know we talked they're probably not going to take a quarterback, but Corral could be that guy, and I think Kevin O'Connell could work wonders with him, to just sit there and try and mold him, learn behind Kirk Cousins for a year and a half, whatever that is, and he's got the leadership element that I just talked about that I want in my quarterback, the mobility, decent arm. He's an accurate thrower. So I think sometimes some of the critiques I've seen is his confidence can kind of waver, if he can't get in a rhythm early. But what do you think about Matt Corral maybe for the Vikings in the second?
Yeah, I mean, if he can fall that far, which I mean, that would be fantastic. I've done a couple of just random mocks. I send some to you, Matt, from time to time, just when I'm bored.
Yes.
And there's oftentimes where, you have a trade back scenario where you have the ability to move back and maybe gain an extra second. And with that, first or second pick in the second round, if he's there, I usually do take him because. Again, I'm a believer. I still have Malik Willis as my number one quarterback in this class, just given I'm not even sure he'll be better than Matt Corral, but just the upside of Matt Corral or of Malik Willis just is better to me overall. But I think the floor is lower than Corral. So when you look at Corral, it's great. Now, I think Tim had asked, slender build, will that hold up in the NFL? Again, it's all about the team he goes to, how they leverage that athleticism, how willingness he is to be able to take hits. I mean, you take a look at a guy even like Drew Brees. Drew Brees wasn't a very big guy. He was pretty slender himself. And he was, obviously he had that shoulder injury that, pushed him from the Chargers to the Saints, but he stayed relatively healthy throughout his whole career. Smaller guy, right? You look even at Lamar Jackson, he's much taller, but he's also just a twig, but he's able to, know when to kind of, slide, know when to run out of bounds and know how to take care of himself. So he isn't, knocking himself out of games because he's trying to play hero ball. So I think if you have a good coaching staff who plays around his strengths, have a good offensive line that's able to kind of help navigate through that as well. And again, making sound decisions like sliding when you're supposed to. I mean, Russell Wilson has made a career out of being healthy. I mean, this last year was the first game he ever missed. And that was a hand thing. And he's, again, not a big guy, but he just was always smart, sliding when he needed to and whatnot. So, it all depends on his mentality when what he ends up doing there.
CBS lists him at 6'2", 212.
Yeah, 212.
Where
It's not
Malik is
bad
6'1",
for.
219. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought Corral was 6'1", but again, I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to take a look at the combine measurements or his pro day measurements, I should say. But yeah, regardless, I think he can hold up. So next quarterback on this list is another guy I think you would like, Matt, and I'm sure
Okay.
you read a little bit. And again, this I'm just going in order of what I like. Again, I'm no professional. I'm not Jordan Reed. I'm not Mel Kiper. I'm not Todd McShay. So, I can't sit
One
here and say I'm a professional in this, but this is what I like to
one
see
thing
in my
I'll
quarterbacks.
one thing I'll say before you continue there is we're just going to cover these top ones, but for fans kind of wanting to hear about some later ones, we did have Thor Nystrom on a couple weeks ago, and he did touch on a few guys. If you want to go back, EJ Perry, Bailey, is it Zapp or Zappy? I don't know how you say his last name.
Zappy, yeah.
And
Yep.
then
Everybody's called
Caleb
him
Elby
Zappy.
as well. So if you want to hear about those guys, head back to the episode about 2 weeks ago, around the end of the episode, and you can hear Thor kind of talk about that. But yeah, Ryan, hit us with like Howell and Ritter and Pickett here.
Yeah. So I'm actually a pretty big fan of Ritter as well. I know, the community is a little split on him because he has a ton of reps. This is kind of the same knock, I guess, so to speak, that Kellen Mond did, where Kellen never really truly progressed beyond the expectation that he came in with, and we drafted him based on tools, which I was a big fan of. I wanted a toolsy prospect to go forward with, and and clearly, at least at this point, it hasn't worked out. No big deal. Where Ritter, where I'm going to say he is a bit different, is his mechanics are significantly stronger than what Kellen Mond's were. I also think he's a bit more athletic than Kellen Mond is. So you're getting a big quarterback, a taller prospect. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5". And he, or I think, no, yeah, 6'3", 6'4", I should say. And he's fast. I mean, I think at the combine he ran like in the 4.5 or 4.4 range. So you're getting a relatively athletic guy. Now, Cincinnati didn't overly overuse that skill set of his. Like, obviously, did they have designated runs for him? Yes, but he wasn't Michael Vick out there. He wasn't Lamar Jackson back in college, or even Kyler Murray back in college. They kind of picked and choose when they ran those quarterback designated plays, and he was more of a kind of a field general. Now, one of the biggest knocks on him is his accuracy never really truly improved throughout. I mean, it did, but like to a point where you're really, really comfortable taking this guy high in the first round, because you look at the prospect, big guy, big body, senior, redshirt senior. He's a guy that has a lot of reps, a lot of leadership. His teammates absolutely love him. He came back for his final year of eligibility just to try to go and win a championship or get his team on the map, which he did. He took his team to the college football playoff, and this is a non-Power 5 conference, right? So that's quite an accomplishment for a guy like that. So yeah, he checked all the boxes, but what you're seeing in his game is that if the play is not there, he doesn't have in my opinion, based on what I've seen, he doesn't have the ability to really like throw his guy open. Like, his anticipation isn't quite elite like some of these other guys even have, and his willingness to sometimes even make those plays, versus like a tuck and run, is just a little different. So I look at a guy like him and I say, I love him as a prospect. He would be more of like a late round 1, early round 2 kind of guy. Another guy that if he fell to the Vikings in the second round, I wouldn't be upset if we decided to take a chance on him long term and see what he could do with a year of sitting or a year or two of sitting behind Kirk Cousins. I think he brings a level to this game where you're getting a quarterback who knows how to read a defense, who knows how to run a pro style offense. He's actually probably a little bit more pro ready than most of the quarterbacks, actually, in my opinion, than all of the quarterbacks. Maybe Kenny Pickett is more pro ready, but I think Ritter would be that. But again, you have that concern around you have a lot of reps and you didn't necessarily become this elite guy. You didn't become the bona fide number one quarterback. Where is this kind of issue here? So, but I'm a big fan. I know Miles is a big fan as well. Tyler, climbing the pocket, he doesn't love him as much. So again, I think it's kind of based on what you like and out of your prospects. And to Tyler's credit, he was spot on with Mond, at least up to this point. And so maybe there's something there. But at the same point, I'm willing to take a risk on, especially on a guy like that who's got some of those athletic traits that you can't coach. So, we'll see how that career turns out. And he definitely could be a possibility in round 2 if some other guys decide that, he's not worthy of that first round pick. So,
I just want to pause here real quick. If you're just tuning in, apologies for the misleading headline here tonight, but Crissy Froyd is not able to join us, but we will work diligently to get her back. And if you're here tonight with us and want to continue to stick around, Ryan's going to hit on maybe one more quarterback here, and then we'll shift over and do a mock draft for the Vikings. So thank you to everybody who's in the chat this evening. We're going to need your help on that mock draft, so stay active on those keyboards while I quickly remind you that if you're looking for a great beer and a great time, to head on over to Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota, because they make unique versions of classic beer styles, putting their own subtle twist on the flavors that craft beer drinkers have come to love. Ranging from esoteric to approachable, subtle to over the top, their beers adhere to the philosophy that there's always more to be discovered. Ryan, hit us with that last quarterback. We'll switch the screen and we'll do the mock draft.
Perfect. So just quick in the chat here, Dan. Of course, I love Brian Asamoah. Why wouldn't I? He went to Oklahoma, but I think he is one of those true 3-down linebackers that if you, hopefully he would last to the 3rd round. And if we wanted to use our 3rd round pick on him, he would be a good guy to kind of have in the waiting behind Jordan Hicks, who only signed a 1-year deal, I believe. So he would be kind of that next guy up mentality. Either if somebody got hurt, or which Kendricks has gotten hurt a couple times this last couple of years, or if we do not re-sign like a Jordan Hicks type guy, he would be able to take over. Back to quarterbacks here. I'm going to actually rip through 3 because there are 3 more big ones, but I'm going to do it much quicker. You mentioned the names: Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, and Carson Strong. All 3 of them I'm very blah on. I don't see the intrigue with Kenny Pickett as much as other people do. I think that you have a redshirt senior who's a very old prospect, right? Who, did really well his senior year, but I don't see the Joe Burrow trajectory that Joe Burrow took with being kind of a somewhat no name, then all of a sudden ascending. Now, granted, did he have the help of one of the best college football teams of all time? Absolutely. But you're also seeing the fact that he's backing that up in the pros, taking his team to a Super Bowl in his, third year? Second year. Yeah. So I don't see that for Kenny Pickett. I don't see the arm strength there. And I don't see I do like his ability to kind of navigate a pocket and move around, but I don't know. There's just this it factor about it that I'm just not seeing with him. He has moments of inaccuracy. He has moments of unwillingness to make the plays that need to be made in the time. So I just not a huge fan. Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell is a product of being around some really good weapons in college. His not this year, but the year before. And, having Diami Brown, having Daz Newsome, and then some really good running backs in Javonte Williams and Michael Carter at North Carolina that allowed him to look really, really good. You saw this year, some of his passing numbers went down. His rushing actually went up. I mean, I think he ran for like 1,000 yards this year. So, you have this kind of dual threat type quarterback, but not overly athletic. I don't think that that's going to translate to the NFL as well. And again, there's no it factor for him. There's no wow throws that I see like on a consistent basis. I don't think that arm talent is elite. He is pretty accurate with the ball at times, but again, I just don't get it with him either. I'm not a big fan. And then Carson Strong, I think Joe Shea had put it out there that you talk to Tyler and he's going to be the next Dan Marino. And sure, I mean, I guess like the upside, if like everything works to plan, you have a Dan Marino type. I don't see it. Again, you have just a howitzer of an arm, which is fantastic. I mean, you want a tool like that because arm strength is very important in the NFL. And accuracy wise, he is pretty accurate for the most part. Again, what did you say?
I said Jamarcus Russell had an arm.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have guys with big arms that can make it, and you have guys with big arms that can't. I'm seeing more of a Ryan Mallett type of player than I'm seeing a Dan Marino. But again, I've been wrong before. I think that he doesn't play the strongest competition. He doesn't have the greatest weapons, but he's got a couple guys that'll get drafted this year that he's been thrown to for the last few years. And I guess it is a little disingenuous for me to say that I don't love him because again, he played all year with a hurt leg, and I'm sitting here defending Baker Mayfield, who played all year with basically one shoulder, and I'm making that excuse for him. So who knows? He might be able to impress in the pros, but I definitely think he's going to be a guy that you probably want to sit and let him kind of learn behind a seasoned veteran. So he would actually be a great opportunity, I think, for a team that likes to go downfield with the ball a bit, and have that style of offense, maybe like the Lions. I don't know exactly how they're going to want to shape their offense, just because I think they're limited with what Jared Goff can do because he doesn't have those tools. But if you have a team like that with a good offensive line like they do, you might be able to have Strong actually be able to produce if they can get some weapons there. So that's it really for the quarterback prospects that I have.
All right. Well, let's shift over then. With the help of our folks watching and in the chat, let's do a little, I think, what did Joe call it? Joseph in the chat, Mock It Wednesday, or Vikings Jerome. We're calling it Mock It Wednesday. So kind of going out on a limb here. We haven't really done this. What do you want to do? Do you want to do 5 rounds? Can we trade in this one, Dave?
Yes.
Okay.
Should we do 3 or 4? 3 is probably fine. Hopefully we can get some trade backs. That makes sense.
Yeah.
3.
Let's do 3.
Hopefully we can get some trade backs. That makes sense, so we don't have to worry about only making 3 picks, but we'll see.
All right. Well, let's fire it up here.
And honestly, if you guys are in the chat here, we'd love to kind of get your input here. We'll talk about some of the options that are there. We'll kind of see what people are thinking. More than likely, we'll kind of go with what you're thinking, unless I'm like very headstrong that we shouldn't. So, oh man, I forgot about the fact that when we did this, I could never see what those trades were.
Oh, hold on. I'll blow it up.
No, you're better. You're more seasoned at this now, Dave.
Yes, I am.
You do a good job.
All right. I'm going to be honest right here. I'm not doing that deal. So the offer is the Saints are offering their first pick, number 16, and their 4th round pick, 120, for the Vikings' first pick. That's a no for me.
And usually the first one they show is the best one.
Uh-oh. Gross.
Next one's from the Texans. It's a first and a 6. So this one intrigues me a little bit.
Yeah, you'd hope to get a second back for moving back that far. I mean, I'm not looking at the charts here at the moment, but I think if you're looking at a value with going back into the 20s, you should be getting a second back in that situation.
I agree.
But I guess they're giving a 3rd and a 6. I know it's completely up to you, Matt. I mean, what are folks saying? Joe, I agree. Benito, Winfrey, Asamoah, call it a day. Let's get all OU here. But
Dave,
I'm not sure who's even available.
Is it possible to see who's on the board?
No, that's what stinks about this.
I think if you hit counter, Dave, If you hit
Okay.
counter down below, and then you can minimize this screen specifically. And when if we decide to go back to this deal, you can actually hit accept. But if you minimize it with the hide button up there, we can
Uh-huh.
actually see who's on the board. So it looks
All
like
right,
Garrett
all right.
Wilson's gone. He's a quarterback that a lot of people like. Jermaine Johnson's gone, or Jermaine Johnson's gone. Obviously, Sauce Gardner, which for everyone listening, that's who you're going to want. I feel like Sauce Gardner is just the cream of the crop cornerback of this class, but it doesn't look like they took any of the other corners. So you have Derek Stingley, you have Andrew
Yeah.
Booth, you have Trent McDuffie. Those are kind of the next three corners. If you're listening to
We're
Thor
getting
Nystrom, he is not a fan of Stingley. If you're listening to Ryan Ortega, I am a fan of Stingley. So there's some good prospects there. Let's see what the folks are saying.
we're getting
Oh,
some
they
mixed
like
reviews
Stingley.
here. So fire it off in the chat if you want to trade, if you want to take Stingley, if you want to take somebody else. We'll give you a minute here to just kind of fire away, and we'll do the most popular. But um, we're getting a
So
Jordan
to talk
Davis
about
vote here.
yeah, Jordan Davis. I think that's a who's is it Vikings Jerome? I think Vikings Jerome is all about Jordan Davis. I've seen him and on the mock or on Tyler the Real Forno show on Mondays. I've seen him on the Tuesday show. I'm drawing a blank because I had a couple beers before this too, so I'm getting a little swirly here. But in the huddle, there we go. That he's a big fan of Davis. Obviously, you look at a Davis like he's a great talent, clearly tested off the
Yeah.
charts. I think he was a game wrecker at Georgia. But when you look at, again, you want to take the best player available. I mean, that's ideally what you're going to do. Davis is a luxury pick at this point in time. Now, could we use another D tackle? He's probably more of like a nose. Yeah, I mean, we could. I would love to get more of like a penetrating kind of three tech style D tackle, like a Perion Winfrey in a later round. But Jordan Davis can kind of do all of that anyway, but just at a bigger size. So and much stronger and better in the run game. So like that's great, but at the same time, like we have Harrison Phillips, we have Dalvin
Tomlinson.
Tomlinson. Armon Watts has played well. Lynch has played relatively well in limited reps. So like
Yeah.
it would be more of a luxury pick when you have a guy like Stingley. You have Drake London and Chris Olave at wide receiver available. Both just really good talents at that position. Jameson Williams. Receiver is going to be a need at some point. I know we all love Thielen and hope he can play forever, but the reality is he's getting older. He's getting more injury prone.
Yeah.
That contract is getting more expensive. So thinking of his replacement down the road isn't a bad idea. Who else do we have? Zion Johnson. He's I think listed as a guard here. Has guard, tackle, center flexibility. I mean, granted, you don't want to spend that high of a pick on an interior offensive lineman, but wow, I'm a big fan of his too.
I think the fans have spoken, and I think we're going to stay at 12 and take Derek Stingley
Okay.
Jr. Pair him up with Pat P, Justin Jefferson, his former coach at LSU. Um, it's a match made in heaven if he falls to 12, in my opinion, and it solidifies
Yeah,
kind of your cornerback spot. So uh,
makes too much sense.
Jets are trying to get us to trade up by giving a 2 and a 5 to move up about 8 spots. That's not horrible.
It's
Um,
not horrible. I just don't think we're in a position in this year's draft to really be making moves up unless you have a guy that is falling that is just an elite talent. Again, I haven't been watching the board too closely, but for the sake of the exercise, I say we stick where we are.
Yeah, we'll just say no to trades tonight. We'll go for our position.
Ooh, Kyler Gordon, that's a cornerback prospect I really like this year.
All right,
George
so we're
Pickens
sitting
is
here
gone.
with Matt Corral there at the 48th pick after we just talked about a perfect
See, that's what
scenario of him
happened
landing
on
here.
Monday. And Thor
Is
was,
But
it?
no, you got to take Corral at this. It's the highest value at this point. Yes. This is exactly what happened on Monday. Corral dropped to round 2 for us.
well, we don't want to do the same thing that the guys on Monday did.
Well, they didn't pick.
That's
I'm trying to remember who they picked in the first.
They did not take Stingley because neither one of them likes Stingley at all.
They
So
picked
I can't.
McDuffie in the first.
Ooh, okay.
that checks out. That checks out.
Uh-huh.
So we're sitting here, and again, we're gonna look at what the listeners are interested in here. Dave, are we at the top of the availability list?
Yep.
There's no sometimes it kind of messes up on us a little.
Yep.
So we're at the
guys,
top of
if you're
it.
in the
So
chat, fire out who you want us to take.
So again, to just fire off a couple names here. Obviously, Matt Corral sounds like a great pick. I'm staying away from Howell if Corral is there. DeMarvin Leal at one time was considered a top 10 pick. His play this year just kind of not necessarily fell off, but he didn't make enough. He struggled with consistency this year, I should say. So he's kind of fallen a bit, but you're getting a top 10 talent with out top 10 production. So you got to take him thinking that you're going to be able to achieve his potential. Petre at safety, he played a lot. He basically was a nickel corner this year, but Baylor's defense is a little goofy in that sense. I'm a big fan of his. He's one of my guys.
I was listening to PFF today, this morning. I don't remember which of their podcasts. They think Petre is going to be the best nickel corner in the league. He has and should be drafted as such. They may call him a safety,
he's
but he says
very good.
he is primarily a nickel safe or a nickel corner, and he plays it fantastic out of college. And they think that is a huge jump or a huge advantage coming to the NFL because he already plays it so well that he will be golden once he gets the NFL and gets the additional coaching, that he will be good to start and become great at nickel.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. So what are folks saying here? So we got somebody asking for Ritter. I think Ritter's gone. We got Petre Walker or Corral Walker. Oh, Kenneth Walker. Yeah, I like the idea. If we decided to trade Dalvin Cook during the draft and take Kenneth Walker, that'd be fine. There's some other running backs that I probably like as good, if not more, in that situation. Quay Walker, again, linebacker is a need at some point here, and he's a heck of a player, so I wouldn't be upset about that. Matt Corral all day by Joe Shea. Petre is used like honey badger at LSU. So, yeah, we have a couple different good options here. Matt, what are you thinking? What position do you think that you want to go with? I mean, obviously we talked quarterbacks today, but what's the next position of need? We just took a corner.
I know it's tough, and I don't want to do what the guys on Monday did and take Corral here. Even though if I was the Vikings, I probably would pull this trigger. I'm kind of looking at Quay Walker. There's not much from a linebacker perspective that the Vikings have in the future, I would say. I mean, Eric Kendricks is getting up there. He's still good. One of my favorite players on that Vikings defense. But having a young guy who can step in, play, be a dynamic linebacker for your team for the foreseeable future might be a good spot to take it. So I think if it's Kwesi in this position right now, using his numbers and analytics and whatnot, he probably goes Corral. But we're going to change things up. We're going to take Walker here with this pick. Any objections from you two?
We're going for a running back?
No,
the
Quay
linebacker.
Walker, linebacker. Yeah, I mean, not a huge objection. Again, I think Petre is probably a first round talent in my opinion. I saw a lot of him play at against Oklahoma. He whooped up on Oklahoma this year, actually. So I obviously not the hugest fan of him from that perspective, but yeah, heck of a ball player. I think he's going to be a great nickel slash. Just he plays more of that kind of like futuristic rover, so to speak, type of player in the Baylor offense. Again, I think who was it? Our local LSU fanboy, Mateo. Mateo said that they used him a lot like Honey Badger when he was at LSU, and I couldn't agree more. I
Mm.
mean, he's just very versatile that way. So I'm a big fan of the Petre pick, but I just think that that position is more important than a
Ryan,
linebacker. But to your point, linebacker is we have nothing after this year outside of Kendrick. So
all right.
Well,
Ryan
there it
signed
is.
off on it. And as we come to our final pick, because the Vikings don't have a fourth round draft pick, and um, we are not taking trade offers. Decline. Get out of here, Giants. Get out of here, Jets.
Oh, they want us to trade up.
We will head to the 77th pick, and I will let Ryan take it away for
no,
who's available.
we should have traded up.
Why?
We lost
Bonito.
Oh,
on Asamoah and Bonito. No,
Mhm.
Asamoah, we wouldn't have taken him with the Quay Walker pick anyway. All right, folks. So again, I listened to the Monday show as well, and they were sitting here with Travis Jones, and I think they ended up taking Travis Jones. Again, realistically, he's not going to be there in the third round. Travis Jones is in great talent at the D tackle position, absolute just beast and athletic beast at that. Um, at the D tackle position, I can't imagine him getting out of the second round. So I'm just going to pretend that he's not there because I just don't think that that's realistic. Um, so taking a look at who else we have, so David Bell, wide receiver, Purdue, comes from an offense that fed him the ball, so he got a lot of production this year. Um, I don't see him as a like any elite abilities in any certain way. I kind of see him as like I don't know, like a little better souped up version of Olabisi Johnson, which I know Matt, you love BC, so or at least you did for the seventh or sixth round pick that we took him for. So that's something that he's a good player, but I just don't see it long term. Calvin Austin the third, another receiver that just lightning bug. Again, Bo, you called it out great after the catch and run after you said freak Raz. Okay, so the relative athletic score. I think that he's just again a lightning bug. Again, I don't know how refined he is in his route, so he's maybe more of like a gadget kind of guy. Don't think that it would be a bad pick because we have three really good route runners. I think KJ Osborne's kind of solidified himself in that as well. So having more of this kind of elusive, offensive weapon wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Let's see here. Alante Taylor, Marcus Jones, I like a lot at corner. There's some really good tight ends available. We have Kate Otten that Dave just put on the screen. Jeremy Ruckert. Here's the thing: we don't have anyone after Irv Smith, and Irv Smith's not necessarily the most reliable in terms of health. I think tight end's a bigger need than most people say. Now I know we brought in that tight end from was it the Rams,
yeah.
who knows the coaching staff loves
Johnny
him, but
Buck.
it was a relatively cheap deal. So we should be. I don't think that we should be like depending on that. I'm a little bit bigger of a fan of Kate Otten than I am of Jeremy Ruckert. Just I think they both provide. I think that the dual purpose of what a tight end can do in terms of you need to be able to go and catch the ball and run some routes, but you also if you can get an inline blocker, that's great. And I like Otten a little bit better as an inline blocker than I do Ruckert from what I've seen. Again, I haven't done too much of a deep dive into my tight ends at this point in time. I need to get on that, but I've only looked at a couple guys, and some of the guys I looked at were more my analysis from last year. So my Weidermeyer analysis was based on last year, not this past season. It was the year before that, and he's clearly struggled without Kellen Mond. So I wouldn't mind. So let's see what these guys are saying. So they're asking for Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm not sure if he's available. I don't know if he's been picked. I wasn't watching too closely. Somebody said they like Austin. Let's see here.
This looks like the sweet spot for tight ends. Your best tight ends are right here.
Yeah, it looks like it. Dan Henneman likes Jelani Woods, which I do too. If we had a 4th-round pick, I think that's where he's probably his sweet spot is. And I probably would take him. I even over Kate Otten potentially, but yeah, that's an interesting take there, Dan. I like that. Let's see here. Ohio State guy, Jeremy Ruckert, Zach Taylor from Florida. Okay. Well, what are you thinking, Matt?
I was sitting here, and a lot of these names not as familiar to me as they probably are to you. So I am going to defer to my co-host on the final pick of this mock draft evening. The only thing I'll call out is that in Thor Nystrom's mock draft a couple weeks ago, he did have Ed Ingram mocked to the Vikings in the 2nd round, I believe. So I feel like 3rd round maybe is a good value for him. But I'd also be okay with pretty much any of the other guys that you've mentioned. Had we not taken a linebacker with the last pick, I would have taken the Wisconsin linebacker in this position.
Leo Chenal. Yeah, I wouldn't have minded Leo. I wouldn't have minded Tyndall, and Beavers, and Troy Anderson is just an athletic freak. So that's somebody to kind of consider as well. Dave, can we just see what edges are available? Just because I think edge is a bigger need than most people think. I mean, I know we have 2 starters, which is great. Again, one of those starters might be gone next year, just given the contract length and the kind of how that's built. Hopefully he's here for a while. Sam Williams, I like Sam. Yeah, nobody that I would be taking at this moment. Okay, sorry about that, Dave. I really think, and then interior offensive lineman, Dave, can we just check that one out too, lastly?
Mm-hmm.
See, I just don't think Kennard really fits what we're doing. I think Fortner and West are, probably more 4th-round guys if we were having a trade back situation. See, you know what? I'm going to go a little bit nuts here. And Joe Shea, you had mentioned it. Where's Cole Strange? I'm a big Cole Strange fan. I think he's athletic as heck. I think that he's nasty as heck. I think he's a mauler. I think we need that on our offensive line. I know we just brought in a ton of guys to compete for that right guard spot, but I'm a big fan. And you know what? I'm going with Cole Shea because I didn't drink the bourbon tonight with him. So we're going to go with his pick tonight. We're going to go Cole Strange.
Cole Strange it is. And there it is.
And we'll worry about tight end later.
It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different than what we've probably seen from other mock drafts, but I'm okay with that. We get Stingley.
What's fun about mock drafts is you just do weird stuff and see what works. Because you know what ends up happening in a real NFL draft? Weird stuff happens that has you scratching your head, and we're just trying to prepare the people for that. And again, who said it? Somebody mentioned on here that Lieber is hearing that linebacker will be taken early, right? So,
we just did that in the 2nd round. I can't see one going in the 1st, but in the 2nd I can see
you better not see anyone going in the 1st. That'd be awful. But a 2nd round pick wouldn't be bad, Dave. And I know you like those thumpers. You like those linebackers. You like those defensive linemen and offensive linemen. So I think we did right by you in this draft.
Mm-hmm. No, I can live with this. And the more I'm hearing about Stingley, the more I'm liking that choice. Yes, he was injured, but he looks to be fully healed. And if he's fully healed, dude's going to rock. He'll be a starting corner for probably 8 years.
And I think we addressed some needs, but not just for now, but in the future, right? I mean, none of those interior offensive linemen that we have signed this year are long-term signings. So even if any of the guys that we picked up do work out, they're not here long term. So having Cole Strange in here as kind of competition with Wyatt Davis and some of these other guys, I think is a positive here. Quay Walker, like we said, Jordan Hicks is not signed long term. So if he decides to move on elsewhere with his career after this year, we have Quay Walker, who in his own right might beat Jordan Hicks out for that starting job. I mean, Quay Walker is a baller. And then, of course, again, everyone's going to be mixed on Stingley. And just because, again, he's great 2019, 2020 had some injury issues, 2021 just absolutely hurt. So, so you're literally going off of, pure potential there. But if you're taking a bet on potential, he's the guy to do it because he's shown elite tape and he's shown elite prowess. And again, as Matt said, you got the LSU connections. LSU coach is here now. You got the Pat P. You got Justin Jefferson, his buddy from that 2019 championship team. So, there's a lot of things going for it. I'll take those athletic traits over, and potential over, maybe a player with a little bit more polish in his game, but maybe has a lower ceiling.
Oh, heck. And he's a perfect man cover corner, and that's what Donatel wants to play. He can play zone. It's got to be. Now, this is a good draft. I like this one.
Perfect.
Very
well,
cool.
let's end it there. I think we did a good job tonight, fellas. Kind of going on the seat of our pants there. But Ryan, I want to thank you for filling the fans in on kind of the quarterback class here this evening, to the best of your ability. Dave, I know you had a lot of shuffling to do pre-show here to make all this kind of work.
Which is a shame because I wanted to meet Chrissy. We are going to try to bring her back on.
Yes,
she's an outstanding young lady. She's beat writer for the Mississippi State Sports Illustrated. Yep. She works for, as Matt has said, NBC Sports Edge and the Draft Network. She's one of their experts. And she happens to be one that specializes in interviewing quarterbacks. And we know, especially when it comes up next year, we'll be looking at quarterbacks.
For everybody in the chat tonight, thank you very much. Next week, hoping to be live with Ryan at Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul again for one final show before we go live for our draft show the following week. So we'll have Deontay Lee he's from The Athletic, on next week to talk about the defensive side of the ball, linebackers, edge, corners, safeties, you name it. We will talk about it next week. And again, like I just mentioned, don't forget, we're only a few weeks out from the Climb in the Pocket draft coverage. We will run live Thursday through Saturday, and day 2 we'll be live at Lake Monster Brewing. We'll have tons of giveaways, beer, hoping the weather's nice, but if not, you can come on inside, ask us some questions, and you'll get a ticket to get some free beer and some free merch from Lake Monster Brewing. So make sure you head on out to that. I have nothing else for you, so thank you for coming tonight. Dave, let the folks know what's coming up next, and we'll see everybody next week.
Tomorrow night, we have Viking Hot Takes with the great Flip Mozzie and Eric Thompson of the Daily Norseman. They're going to be asking all sorts of questions. I'd have to look. I've already got them because I got them from last week. And it should be another fun show with those guys. Flip, I'll just give you a warning. Flip has been in a mood lately. So he's going to be a little bit hot takey-ish on his stuff. It should be fantastic. Then, of course, on Saturday, you have myself and Darren as the two old bloggers, and we're getting into what realistically you can expect from the draft. We're looking at the numbers. Who's going to start, who's not going to start, who's going to be, make the Pro Bowl, who's not, and look at the percentages because they are less than what you actually think. But hopefully, Kwesi and his analytics will bust that trend. What do we say, guys?
Skol Vikes.
Skol Vikings.
Skol Vikings. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, the Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.